The iPhone 15s have the biggest battery ever on iPhone, but Apple didn't say they have the
best battery life ever in an iPhone.
That's why I bought all iPhones that Apple currently sells, plus a couple more. So let's see which has the best battery life. Because spoiler alert, it's not the one Apple says. So let's unplug them and jump right in with some YouTube. I know there's many iPhones on this table, but bear with me. For this test, I've included all the new iPhone 15s, of course, as well as the predecessors, the 14 Pro Max, 14 Plus, and regular 14. Last year, the 14 Plus had the best battery life of all smartphones, so I'm very curious to see if it can be dethroned. I've also thrown in the iPhone 13, 12, 11, and SE. It will be very interesting to see how battery life has improved over the years, and I do also realize that most people who are looking to switch to a new 15 model aren't coming from a 14 or even 13. They usually have an older iPhone, so this test can demonstrate how they compare to the new ones. An hour into the test, we already have some huge disparities. The iPhone 13 and newer are all doing very well. So far, the 15 Pro Max and Plus are tied for first place. I'm happy to see that they both are edging out the previous champ, the 14 Plus. Unfortunately, the iPhone 12, 11, and SE are already quite a bit behind. They're all running the new iOS 17, which might affect battery life, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily the reason. The iPhone 11 is honestly just getting too old at this point. I mean, it was released 4 years ago, and the SE simply has a tiny battery. The iPhone 15s have the biggest battery ever on iPhone, but not by much, as you can see. Nevertheless, they are performing as expected, with the Plus and Pro Max still tied for first place, and the 15 and 15 Pro just a couple of percent behind. The regular 14 and 13 are doing weirdly well, tied with the new 15s, and even beating the 14 Pro Max and Plus. I had to double check the brightness because I couldn't believe it, but the reason for that is so far we've only been consuming content and a bigger screen equates to more battery drain, but we'll see if this continues throughout the test. Battery life on the new iPhone 15s is quite important because for the first time ever on iPhone, they're using USB-C. And that enables them to kind of function like a power bank, because now you can basically charge any device that uses USB-C. So if you plug in your friend's phone or your headphones, you can charge them, which is why I'll take as much battery life as I can get. So far it's looking quite good. But now it's time for some gaming. Apple is making a big push for gaming performance. It's using the extra headroom to push for more performance instead of efficiency. But let's actually test that performance. I usually do this later on in the test, but the older models are already on such low battery life. I was worried that if I'll wait any longer, I couldn't include them in the performance test anymore because they would be dead already. Now in terms of specs, the new 15 Pro models have the world's first 3nm chip, the A17 Pro. The regular 15s have the same A16 Bionic chip as the 14 Pro models. And then the regular 14s, the 13 and SE have the A15. The 12 has the A14 and the 11 the A13. The results are as expected. The newer the chip, the better the performance, but it's only marginal. I'd say anything with an A15 or newer will be perfectly fine and you won't be able to really tell a difference. The iPhone 11 and SE have some screen dimming going on because frankly the 11 isn't performing that well anymore and the SE can't really utilize its power because of the small chassis and battery. The new 15 Pros are also the first iPhones to pack 8GB of RAM, so you should be able to keep more apps open in the background, which is nice. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to smash the like button to show your support. Just past the 4-hour mark, the SE and 11 are on single digits, which is pretty bad considering all except for the 12 still have at least 50% left. By the way, don't worry, as always, all phones are on the same Wi-Fi network with Bluetooth and location enabled. There's no SIM card in either of them, and I've matched the brightness to keep it all fair. Not long after, we have our first casualties. Moving on to the camera, which is always super intense on the battery. Shortly after, the 12 also died. They actually died in order of price, which is kind of funny. I mean, I get why the SE and 11 are doing so poorly, but the 12 should be doing better. Unfortunately, that's because this device I have here is already quite a bit older, so battery health is only at 81%. So if you'd get a brand new one, it would last you longer, but it would still die in this order. Now, the SE still has 100% battery health and the 11 is at 99%, so these results are still accurate. Now, you might be wondering why the 14 Pro Max is doing worse than even the iPhone 13. This was my main phone last year, and battery health has also decreased a bit. It's currently at 93%, so again, if you get a new one, it will last you even longer. It's weird though, because up until 2 months ago, battery health was at 100%, but ever since the last few updates, the battery health and also battery life has dropped significantly. The rest are all brand new though and at 100% battery health. By now, both the regular iPhone 15 models are beating the Pros, which is surprising because if you pay for a Pro phone, you should also get Pro battery life. I can imagine someone buying a Pro device and ending up mad because they didn't get the best battery life. I think it comes down to one thing, the display, because that is still the component that drains the battery the most. The non-Pro models have basically the exact same display as the Pros now. They even get as bright and have the dynamic island. So the only real difference is the refresh rate. The Pros have ProMotion, which goes all the way up to 120 Hz and can go all the way down to 1 Hz. The non-Pro models are fixed at 60 Hz. I love the smooth scrolling of 120 Hz, but I guess you will have to sacrifice some battery life for that. By the way, the screens are basically unchanged since the iPhone 12, except for some changes in brightness and the addition of Dynamic Island now. By now, all of them had a low battery warning except for the 14 Plus, 15 Plus, and 15 Pro Max. If you're wondering why the results are a little lower than usual, that's because I made this test a bit more intense than usual. To be honest, that's just because I had plans and I needed the phones to die. But the 15 Pro Max and 15 Plus still lasted a very long time. So let's fast forward things and finally get to the results. In last place is the iPhone SE. It only lasted 4 hours and 27 minutes, which is simply a bad result. Don't buy this phone, please. I'm begging you. There's not much to add here. It's just bad battery life. In 10th place is the iPhone 11. At 4 hours and 59 minutes, it's still a bad result. I know this is a pretty affordable iPhone, but if you can afford it, I would at least go with the iPhone 12. The 11 doesn't have good battery life, the performance is also lacking by now, and the display is subpar. Next up is the iPhone 12. It lasted only a couple minutes longer, but take this result with a grain of salt, because remember, this result was achieved with only 81% battery health. It's hard to estimate how much longer it would have lasted with 100% battery health. If it were linear, it would be around 6 hours and 14 minutes. But I know that's not exactly how this worked. Now, this is a decent result. If you're looking for an affordable iPhone, I'd say this is the most affordable one I can recommend. Now, next up was actually the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but once again, the battery health wasn't at 100%. So in 8th place, we actually have the iPhone 15 Pro, which definitely came as a shock to me. I mean, this is the second most expensive phone Apple currently sells and the best Pro phone. It definitely didn't last as long as I had hoped. I guess the more power-hungry chip without the bigger battery of the Pro Max just doesn't make it last that long. That said, it's still plenty of battery life for most people. Next up, lasting just 4 minutes longer, is the iPhone 14. Kind of weird that last year's regular iPhone outlasted the 15 Pro. With Apple dropping the price of the 14, this is now a great option for anyone looking for just a regular iPhone without any fancy bells and whistles. However, in 6th place, we have the iPhone 13, which is basically the exact same phone as the 14, so you can save some cash by choosing the 13 instead of the 14. I'd say purely based on battery life and performance, the iPhone 13 seems to be the sweet spot. Older iPhones are not good enough anymore, and the newer ones don't give you that much more. So the 13 perfectly sits in the best value position. Now in 5th place, at 7 hours and 27 minutes, we have the iPhone 15. Still not really an upgrade over the 13, but it is better than the 15 Pro. I guess because it has a slightly bigger battery and doesn't have the more power-hungry chip. Now in 4th place is the iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you account for the battery health, it would have lasted around 7 hours and 32 minutes. Still a very good result, but not as impressive as it was when it first came out. Recent updates really did decrease the battery life quite a bit. Now in 3rd place is the iPhone 14 Plus, lasting a bit longer at 8 hours and 10 minutes. Just like last year when I first did this test, the Plus outlasted the Pro. The question is, who won it in the end? Well, just like with the 14s, with the 15s, the Plus has the upper hand. So that leaves the iPhone 15 Pro Max in 2nd place. At 8 hours and 50 minutes, it's still a very impressive result and will last you through pretty much all days. It's still unfortunate that the Pro Max, the flagship device, doesn't get the best battery life though. In 1st place, we have the iPhone 15 Plus. 9 hours and 10 minutes is an amazing result and is now the new battery king. I'm curious to see how these new iPhones stack up against the best Android phones, so make sure you subscribe to not miss those videos. Watch this video next to see how the Samsung phones stack up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.